Okay, it's 2:00 and we're going to get going with our final panel for the afternoon. And I got to tell you, I've been waiting all day for this one. I am so looking forward to taking some time and refueling and generating sort of the creativity that I know is going to come from this focus on the arts and child well-being. So let's let the young people get us started.
I express myself through basketball.
Both my drawing and my poetry.
I express myself through dancing.
Drawing.
We express our creativity in drawing.
From our heart.
Music makes me feel like I can be a part of something.
It's like I'm in my own imaginary world.
Dance makes me feel free.
Happy.
Music makes me feel free.
Happy.
Great. Music makes me feel happy because when I grow up, I'm going to be a star. And when I grow up, I'm going to know how to play music.
Art makes me feel calm.
I experience art basically everywhere. Everything is art.
School?
Graffiti on buildings.
Like on trains or walls?
Mostly in museums.
We see art everywhere we go.
So today, when Deirdre McPherson joined the Cleveland Museum of Art as the Department Director of Public Programs, she had already been a very enthusiastic part of the local Cleveland art scene. Previously, Deirdre was the first curator of public programs at the Museum of Contemporary Art, MoCA Cleveland. She also founded the Cleveland chapter of Sister Cinema, an organization that brings people together around films by and about LGBTQ women of color. The Cleveland Heights native has undergraduate and MBA degrees that focus on marketing and returned to her hometown 10 years ago as a marketing manager for the Cleveland Orchestra and later the Council of Smaller Enterprises. We are really glad to have her back home in Cleveland and with us today to moderate what we know will be an inspiring and provocative session. Please welcome Deirdre.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor to be here today. I'd like to thank Gabrielle, Jill, and Samantha and all the staff for all the work they put into organizing today and for inviting me to moderate the panel on the occasion of the Schubert Center's 20th anniversary. I'd also like to thank my parents. My mother, hi Mom, is in the audience today. Yes, really, my mother's incredible. Growing up in Cleveland Heights, I had a lot of access to the arts. I attended preschool and violin lessons at the Music Settlement in University Circle. Yes, I attended Cleveland Heights High School, and I participated in the orchestra there. And I was extremely blessed and privileged to grow up in a home and school environment that not only provided me with access to the arts, but also the encouragement and training that I needed to grow and develop my talents and pursue a career in this field. So I'm very eternally grateful to Cleveland for that. And I came to love and value these gifts tremendously over time. And one of the beliefs that I developed is that when someone gives you or shares something of value with you and you benefit from it, you have a moral obligation to share with others. So the mission at the Cleveland Museum of Art is to create transformative experiences through art for the benefit of all the people forever. And in my role as Director of Public Programs, I develop art-inspired programs and events to showcase the power and the relevance of art. My goal is to introduce the right mix of programs to speak to the diverse communities that we serve. One of the programs at the Cleveland Museum of Art that is really fantastic is one that several of my counterparts on the panel are part of, and that's the Cleveland Foundation's Arts Mastery Initiative. The Arts Mastery Initiative is one that involves music, dance, theater, photography, and now visual art. As a player in this program, the Cleveland Museum of Art, we are introducing a mastery program that will train the next generation of museum leaders. And I bring this up because this is a partnership that is with the Museum of Art, Cleveland Public Library, and Cleveland Metropolitan School District. As an educational and arts and all these incredible arts institutions and a variety of institutions we have around city in arts, education, and civics, how are we working together to help young people realize their full potential? And that's what we're all here and interested in hearing from our panelists today. And so with that, I'd like to just kind of outline how our panel is going to work today. We have 6 panelists, of course, and I'll introduce the first 3. Then we will take a short break. We'll have a few engagement questions that we'd love to hear everyone's feedback on. And then we'll follow that with a brief panel discussion and some Q&A. So with that, we'll get started. And I'd like to introduce our first 3 panelists. Honey Bell Bay, founding director of the Distinguished Gentlemen of Spoken Word. Her presentation, Sharing Our Poetic Voices on the Stages of Life. Please welcome Honey Bell Bay. Next up will be Faye Hargate, if she happens to arrive on time. The people who are the busiest and doing so much work, she's on her way, but if she doesn't make it in time, we'll skip over her. But Faye Hargate, she is the director of community ensembles for Cleveland Public Theater. Her presentation is titled The Spiral, Cleveland Public Theater's Dynamic Model for Arts, Education, and Community Engagement. And third on our list of the first half of our presenters is Dr. Lisa Copes. She is the Associate Professor of Music Education at Case Western Reserve University. The title of her presentation is Parenting Musically. But let's get started with Honey Bell Bay. Thank you.
Waking up to people arguing. Now I'm waking up to trains.
Before I get ready to go to the Distinguished Gentleman of Spoken Word, I always check to make sure that it's safe to be going first.
Miss Honey had gave him an opportunity that we didn't really see the opportunity in him. She said, y'all gotta let this boy do his thing, allow my father to let him be a teenager. She said, y'all can't keep counting this little boy. Give him to me, I'll take care of him.
I enjoy it pretty well because we get to meet lots of new people and we get to see all types of events.
My teachers would say stuff like, you're not gonna make it, or you can't do it. It really left a laceration on my heart, but it left an impact on my life too. It left the impact because it made me It made me want to leave a mark on the world. It made me want to leave an impact on the ones who thought that I was never going to be anything in life.
Good afternoon. I am Honey Bell Bay, the director of the Distinguished Gentleman, and I wanted to start with the video because for the sake of brevity, what could better tell what we do than the young people themselves? There were a few key words in that piece, and we videotaped that just for today. And it was poetic excellence, poetic equity, poetic existence, and poetic expression. I just want to take a few seconds and talk about two of them. In the poetic equity, if you notice, in 3 different spaces within that video, we used the backdrop of graffiti. One was a literal graffiti backdrop. One was us walking outside of our facility to the real existence that they see every day. And one, when we talk about the unity of the arts, one was the same exact style of graffiti that the young men saw when we traveled to Paris. What was beautiful in that video, you have more foster children who are from abandoned environments learning to use the arts, these abandoned buildings, as the backdrop to exist in this world without taking it out with your fist. And so Brandon, you saw him in the video. Brandon was a young man who did not even speak before he came into the program, and they wouldn't give him the opportunity to speak. And I didn't know that that's what his sister taped until I saw the video. So it talks about how the arts unify us. This band of young men with a non-funded program, they raised their own funds. It was beautiful to hear the Plain Dealer talk because it's because of them banding together, putting their story on the front page of the paper multiple times, that we landed in Europe with our poetry, all the way in Europe. And so the other E that we'll talk about is this poetic existence. How we survive this poetic existence, we leave those same urban environments every year, and we go into the wilderness to train. We call it poetic boot camp. So it's not easy, and they will tell you they have to do the high ropes courses. And so the guys, I don't know, I think they think I'm their peer because they ask silly questions like, Miss Honey, you're not doing the ropes course. Now, do I look like I'm climbing a tree with you? I don't even get in a canoe with them anymore. I used to in my young years, but I've had this program going since I was age 25, all in an attempt to take what I was passionate about, this poetry, and use it as a tool to fight the ills in our society. I can't change the abandonedness, but it doesn't look abandoned to me. It just looks like art. And the whole premise of the program with them, how do we take what was abandoned and use it as art? So the first poem I learned as a child, I teach them. I was, I think, 9 when I learned this poem, and it's called I Too Sing America. And I teach the same poem with them. And it says,
when company comes, but I laugh, eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table. When company comes, nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America.
So this is the mic. Hello. Awesome. Hi, everybody. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Honey, for those inspiring words. My name is Faye Hargate. I am the Director of Community Ensembles at Cleveland Public Theater. I am a theater artist, educator, director, actor, and activist. And I am really grateful to share with you Cleveland Public Theater's dynamic organizational model for arts, education, and community engagement. The mission of Cleveland Public Theater is to raise consciousness and nurture compassion in our community through groundbreaking performance and life-changing education programs. We believe that art can change lives. We are committed to community. We celebrate diverse voices. We are dedicated to the mastery of art skills and artistic excellence. And for Cleveland Public Theater, arts, education, and community engagement are interconnected. And we have found the best way to describe what happens at CPT is to use a spiral model. A spiral, a reverberating form moving in and out and echoing that core mission of Cleveland Public Theater. Now, at the center of this spiral is our deep artistic research. This is long hours in the rehearsal room asking those penetrating questions for the art form. How is the art form changing? How are we changing that art form? And when that deep artistic research and that time spent on honing those theater skills and the mastery of those skills is presented to the public, like this play, we then move into our second layer, which are our presented public works. These are relevant plays, plays that speak to our community, to the desires of our community, and the stories of our community. In 2013, Cleveland Public Theater initiated Teatro Público de Cleveland. In the past 5 years, this ensemble of artists who are self-identified as Latino, Latina, have been committed to the theater art and presenting the multiplicity of voices, of the Latino voices in our Cleveland Latino communities and the stories of those voices. Since its formation, Teatro Público de Cleveland has grown from about 8 ensemble members, and these are amateur artists and professional artists, to over 35. And every year, CPT is committed to presenting, co-presenting with Teatro Público, 2 presented works, a bilingual show and a Spanish language show. When we move out from our presented works, we move into our third layer, which is our education programs. Cleveland Public Theater has 3 core education programs: our Wye-Haven Theater Project, our Student Theater Enrichment Program, and our Brick City Theater Program. Wye-Haven Theater Project is a collaboration with the Wye-Haven Transitional Home for formerly homeless men who are in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. The Student Theater Enrichment Program is a job training program for Cleveland teens 14 to 19 years old over the summer. And the Brick City Theater Program is almost a 20-year collaboration with Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority for youth 5 to 14 and their families who live in public housing. It's a year-round program. All of these 3 programs are focused on honing theatrical skills and through that gaining life skills. And the participants are collaborating with CPT educators to develop original work that is based on their life experiences, and then they are producing and performing those plays in their communities and in the larger Cleveland community. So, here's Wye-Haven, and STEP, and Brick City. So I started with the spiral, and we might be asking, okay, what does that core research, the presented public professional works, and education have in common? What interconnects those 3 layers? It is the process, the values, and most importantly, the people. You may have remembered this photo from before. So those same people who are at the center asking those questions about their artistic craft, thank you, are moving to presenting works, to the education works. And this extends out to our outermost layer, which are our community engagement programs. So one example of this is Station Hope. Station Hope is now in its 5th year. It is a public event that takes place at St. John's Church. And St. John's is the first authenticated Underground Railroad site in Cleveland. It is next weekend, please come, May 5th. It's free, yep. Over 250 artists are involved in this event. They are speaking to the legacy of Cleveland's work for social justice and also highlighting the issues that are still present today. Here are pictures from Station Hope. And you can see from those pictures that there's a range of artists, from our education programs to our professional artists, to our community artists. So what happens when artists are involved in each layer of the spiral? That core research, that professional production, the education, community engagement. The impact of all those experiences moves in and out and in. Because when I witness Teatro Público performing a play, I am changed. When I am in the classroom collaborating to create a work with Brick City Theater, I am changed. So we also like to call it the heartbeat model. Thank you.
As we think about the ways our community's children are engaging with the arts through community organizations and schools, it's also important to consider how families participate in the arts beginning in the home. Today, I'm sharing some of my research on how 8 Cleveland area families use music in their daily lives. My presentation celebrates what families are doing, as so eloquently stated by Camille Verbotsky this morning at the Early Childhood panel. I am a music educator and an ethnomusicologist by training. Scholars in both of these fields have documented the idea of musical parenting, in which parents or family members formally or informally instruct children in music, perhaps through enrolling the child in an early childhood music class or taking their children to lessons. Musical parenting is quite well documented in these fields. However, many of the studies are limited to the families who choose to put their children in formal instruction, so there tends to be a higher SES represented and in those studies. Less frequently discussed, however, is parenting musically. I use this term to refer to the ways that family members use music for non-musical purposes, such as calming fighting children in a car, passing the time while cleaning, or learning. I've spent the last year engaged in monthly fieldwork with 8 Cleveland area families who represent a range of diversities of socioeconomic status, race, religion, immigration status, country of origin, family structure, length of time in Cleveland, and musical training. As part of my project, I also examined media messaging regarding parenting and music as portrayed by mainstream parenting books and websites. Based on a content analysis, I found that 3 tensions exist. Recognizing the importance of music in a child's life versus the pressure that children are overscheduled these days. A second tension of perceiving music as something that should be handled by experts versus music as something that all people can do and all parents can provide in the home. And finally, viewing music and music education as a commodity or a luxury versus something that everyone can access, particularly through technology. Throughout these media sources, an awareness of white privilege in parenting books and sites arose, which I've been asking my participants to respond to. There's also a privileging of Western European musical norms that is cause for concern among these media sources. I'd like to share just a few stories from the families I'm working with to illustrate how these families use music with their children. All names are pseudonyms. The Murphy family is a transracial adoptive family, and they carefully curate a playlist for 3-year-old Maggie. They use this during their car rides to preschool and dance parties in the living room after dinner. You can see one version of the playlist on the screen. They shared that they introduce music for Maggie, and she gets the final decision of whether it becomes part of the playlist or not. And they also communicate with her preschool teacher and find out what they're listening to at school, put it on her list at home, and the teacher has adopted some of the home list favorites for the school as well. What was most interesting to me was Maggie's mother's comment that she's chosen some of the music to represent who Maggie might find herself being perceived as in the world as a young Black girl. And so it was really important that Beyonce and other African American artists were on the playlist. And so she was developing and evoking a form of identity through music. And this resonated in several of the sources, the media sources that I read as well. The Baskin family joked that when I asked them to be part of this study, it would be a very short project because they claimed to not have a lot of music happening in the home. But as I returned month after month, they noticed that music occurred through the weekly and monthly rhythms of the Shabbos table, celebrations of Hanukkah and Purim, and more. Mrs. Baskin shared that she likes to dance with her children in the supermarket because there is upbeat music playing, and she has fond memories of musicking with her children in this way. Mr. Baskin has taught his son to cantor or sing scriptures in the same way that his father taught him. As part of my research year, I am teaching the 3 older children to play the piano at their mother's request. She recalls her grandfather saying that if you can play the piano, you're the life of the party. 11-year-old Jessica played Rock of Ages for their family Hanukkah celebration, and 9-year-old Yarucham has prepared Happy Birthday for Gabriella's 3rd birthday next week. The Finacci Pastor family are first-generation immigrants to Cleveland, and they bring an international perspective to their parenting. Mrs. Pastor teaches their 4-year-old daughter Francesca the Hungarian folk songs of her childhood so that Francesca can sing these with her grandmother via Skype. In the summers, the family travels to Europe, and last summer, Francesca sang a folk song at a folk festival in her mother's hometown. So one of the meanings for this family is the interconnectedness that music can bring. And this is echoed in another family, the Hassan family, who are recent refugees from a Middle Eastern country. I asked all of the families about their hopes and dreams when it comes to music, and there were several common themes. First, they spoke about not pushing their children or forcing them into certain musical roles. Second, families acknowledged the central role of listening. Many families indicated that it was important that their children know their family's musical canon, or the body of work that was important to their family. But that was different for each family. For some, Michael Jackson, for some, Broadway, for some, current pop hits. Finally, parents indicated that their hopes and dreams were about the music at the same time they were about more than the music. For instance, one family spoke about the importance of the children developing self-efficacy and viewed music as one way to do this. This ties well to today's theme as we recognize the ecological view of children's development. As I've journeyed with the 8 families this year, they have taught me the importance of sharing a broader message when it comes to families and music. Let's start by getting to know the families we work with and what their musical interests, backgrounds, and passions are. Let's continue by asking families what their hopes and dreams are for the children musically and adapting where possible to facilitate these goals. In our profession, in music education, we have an 80% problem. Statistically, we only reach 20% of students in high school through musical offerings. There's 80% of students unreached. Music educators have been debating for decades how to bring more students into the music classroom. But have we asked families what the families would like to see us offer curricularly? For the most part, we have not. We need to do better for our kids. Community practitioners, including teachers, social workers, and medical professionals, can suggest ways for families to weave music into daily routines in support of effective, cognitive, kinesthetic, emotional, spiritual, and even musical development. And pediatricians could sing a song with families as well as reading a book at well child visits, as was documented this morning in the Reach Out and Read program. We must let families know that we value their music. We must let families know that informal musicking is important, like the Baskin family who thought they weren't musical, yet incorporated singing, dancing, and listening almost daily. Let's point out the benefits of weaving music into daily life and the ability of all families to do that already. Thank you.
Thank you to our first 3 panelists for your really inspiring presentations. We now have a few polling questions we'd like for your participation on and your responses to. So how does this work? All right, if you can pull out your cell phones, please. and navigate to the URL. The URL is on the screen. And so the first question, how important do you believe the arts are to a young person's healthy development, whether by doing or by experiencing as a viewer or listener? Okay. All right, next question. Oh, sorry. Oh, 16 votes. Now I see. It's a question?
Show the URL again.
Here, it's on your table. It's on your table tent. If you tell them it's here.
Oh, it's on the table, each table tent. Sorry. Okay. Okay.
Yep, a few more of those.
All right, does anyone need more time? Raise your hand.
Kind of a consensus.
Yes, looking at that, definitely more of a consensus, vitally important. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Where do you think youth in general are most exposed to the arts outside of school?
Go ahead and click it so they can start.
I have to think hard about that answer. Okay. Okay, looks like we're kind of skewing towards in the media here. Okay. A few people may be changing answers. No pressure. All right. Does anyone need more time, or should we go to the next question? All right, question number 3. How frequently do you think youth are participating in an arts-related activity in the greater Cleveland community? And we can think of arts-related activities in a broad sense, I think. Oh, and the answers, the options, daily, at least a couple of times a week, maybe a couple of times a month, just a few times a year, or rarely, if ever. Looks like a couple times a month is winning out. All right. Let's go to our 4th question. What do you think are the biggest barriers for youth participation in the arts in our greater Cleveland community? Lack of programs sparking their interest, lack of community ethic that values the arts, inability to access the arts programming, lack of resources for youth to participate, or lack of info about arts-related opportunities. All right, so it looks like we're skewing towards inability to access arts programming. All right, and our final question. To what extent do you agree or not with the following statement? Children living in the city of Cleveland proper are less likely to be exposed to or have access to art programming compared to kids in greater Cleveland communities. Strongly agree, mildly agree, disagree, or no opinion? Looks like we were pretty split on those first 2 answers. All right, so that is our pulse. We will talk about those a bit more later. But next, I would like to introduce our next 3 panelists. Heather Meeker is the co-director of the Musical Theater Project. The title of her presentation, Optimistic Voices, Engaging Hearts and Minds Through Musical Theater. Following Heather is Pamela DiPasquale, Director of Educational Programs for Cleveland Playhouse. And the title of her presentation, Creating Trauma-Informed Classrooms with Care, Compassionate Arts Remaking Education. And then finally, we'll hear from Lee Lazar, Executive Director of the Rainey Institute, and Jemiah Dotson, a youth performer with El Sistema Rainey Orchestra Music Program. And the presentation is titled, From Practice to Performance, Social Change Through Music. So first, please join me in welcoming Heather.
Thanks, Deirdre. How many of you know the song Optimistic Voices by title? Raise your hands. I'm going to bet that once you've heard it, nearly all of you will remember it, particularly from your childhood. Today, you have the added bonus of hearing the songwriters themselves sing the tune. Imagine a field of red poppies and munchkin voices.
On the face of the earth or the sky. Hold on to your breath, hold on to your heart, hold on to your hope. March up to that gate and bid open, open.
Of course, that is from The Wizard of Oz, a musical and a song that our teaching artists use in our Kids Love Musicals school residency. And Oz lyricist Yip Harburg defined the power of musical theater, noting that words make you think a thought. Music makes you feel a feeling, but a song in a musical makes you feel a thought. And that is the great advantage. Today, I'm going to talk about the Musical Theater Project and how we leverage that advantage with a particularly vulnerable group of students, those with physical, cognitive, and developmental disabilities, and how we measured the program's effectiveness with an innovative research partnership with the Schubert Center. Musicals open a window to the human condition. We explore the importance of the American musical and invite people of all ages to find personal meaning in its songs, its artists, its themes, through one-of-a-kind concerts, our nationally syndicated radio programs, a Grammy Award-winning record label, and with our evidence-based Kids Love Musicals school residencies for students with disabilities provided under contract with the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Many of you have heard of that musical theater term, triple threat, someone who can sing, dance, and act equally well. Performance elements like acting, singing, and dancing offer engaging points of entry for diverse learners. So through play-based teaching methods, Kids Love Musicals invites students in a group setting as an ensemble to use their hearts, their minds, and their hope to open personal gates in highly individualized ways. So what is a KLM residency like? Well, there isn't any time to get you all on your feet today, but suffice to say that that classroom for Kids Love Musicals is engaged, curious, and joyful. Our teaching artists perform for and with students, teach and rehearse songs and movement, and facilitate group discussion about a musical's story and characters. No matter their age, stage, or ability, students take a journey of fun and self-discovery. The program supports arts learning and English language arts standards, but also socio-emotional learning outcomes that are the essential foundation to any student's academic success. The need is significant. In addition to the high poverty rates we've acknowledged today, more than 20% of students in CMSD have some disability that requires extra help, the 9th highest percentage of students in the state. KLM uses a whole body approach to learning and a student-centered curriculum. In Oz, students sing and dance as the Scarecrow, Tin Man, the Lion, but they also identify how those characters think and feel, and when they have felt or thought that way too. Students make and share connections, often a challenge in a special education classroom. We invite students to think big ideas and take safe risks through the world of the musical. That can mean something as simple as uttering a 5-word sentence for the first time, looking someone in the eye for 5 seconds, staying in a group activity for more than 10 minutes. We use ritual, song, and engaging activities to add context to pretend play, as Dr. Sandra Russ advocated this morning. And there is a true deficit of play in most classrooms, but especially in special education classrooms. When we piloted the curriculum 4 years ago, Teachers told us to manage our expectations. There was no way that their students, especially those with autism spectrum disorder, would be comfortable exploring abstract ideas like loneliness, what home means to us personally, what leaving a friend is like. Or even pretending to be a witch, melting after a pail of water has been thrown. But these students surprised them and continued to surprise them. And we weren't surprised. Every kid wants to melt as a witch. And that's all good, but how do we know that it works? The Kennedy Center encouraged us to gather empirical evidence. With the Schubert Center and PhD candidate Elena Zyga, who's here in the room, we collaborated on a community research model to assess the program in the field. We are a small arts education nonprofit. We knew what we wanted to know, but not how to translate that into a solid, independently verified assessment. Elena created a new socio-emotional skill scale and a methodology to help us collect that data over 2 school years so her team could code and analyze the results. And across a range of abilities at multiple schools, the program showed gains across our measures. I encourage you to seek out Elena's article about the entire study published in the Journal for Intellectual Disabilities last year, and we can also get you a copy of a 1-page summary. What was terrific for us was to see the individual examples of improvement as well, like Micaiah and Brandon, both of whom had significant improvement in just 4 weeks in eye contact, engagement, and emotional responses. We place equal weight on anecdotal evidence from teachers, paraprofessionals, and parents, especially since those gains may come weeks or months after our teaching artists have left. We also love to hear the ways that students surprise their own teachers and parents, an outcome that might be just as valuable as the student outcomes themselves. Our work with the Schubert Center has been essential for the ongoing development of our program and for the students that we serve. We continue to analyze data for 2 additional phases of research. What's more, it has contributed to the increasingly important conversation at the intersection of arts integration and special education, a conversation designed to encourage every child to march, to wheel over, or to dream up to a gate, and to bid it open. And I just want to acknowledge real quick that we have a teaching artist who was there at the beginning of gathering all of that evidence. She's not with us any longer, but she was an important part of that project. And Caitlin, we're thrilled that you're here too. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
For the past 4 years, Cleveland Playhouse has been researching, developing, implementing, and evaluating CARE, a theater curriculum designed to intentionally increase creativity, social emotional competencies, and reading proficiencies for students living in poverty. However, in order to be effective, we first had to address childhood trauma. Depending on the circumstance, between 25 to 90% of children experience events that leave them traumatized. Childhood trauma can have a direct, immediate, and potentially overwhelming impact on the ability of a child to learn. CARE adopted a trauma-informed approach to our curriculum in classrooms. And part of that approach asked our teachers to listen. From this listening, we developed a series of 32 monologues that were based on the kind of traumas the students were sharing again and again. Today, I would like to screen 3 of those monologues for you. The first illustrates the trauma faced by immigrant children setting up in a new country.
My sister Delphina is 12, and I am 10. So she's always been there for me in all the places I go. Sometimes she cuts her eyes impatient at me. Now in all the places she goes. School, playground, church basement, library, 7-Eleven. I'm like, como una sombra. She drags me with her all day, so she has impatient eyes. But also, there's her hands. My hands know her hands. My hands are hot and soft and sweaty, but Delphina's are always cool and strong and firm, like a strong chair holding me up. So many things happened since we got from Chiapas. Everything's so fast. Delfina runs with everything fast. Strong and cool like her hands. I stay back and watch as she cuts her eyes impatient at me. Comes back reaching impatient. Cool hand grabs hot hand. But her hands remember me and how we hold on and don't let go. Not when we got separated from Mama, Gabriel, and JJ. Not when we waited and waited in line after line. Not when we slept at night on the cement floor with only one blanket. Not when I got so sick and they tried to put me by myself in that weight room. Not when Mama come back to us without Gabriel and JJ. Not on our first day of school and that sea of faces staring sideways at us. So ever since I was born, and just like this, I open my eyes, I look around, and whatever I see, whatever I hear, the thing that I feel is Delfina's hands holding mine.
The next illustrates the trauma of living in chronically chaotic environments in which financial resources are not consistently available.
I'm hanging with these new kids. They're new kids to me, but I'm a new kid to them, which is excellent. They don't know me, so I can be anything. We're at McDonald's, and here's where the feeling starts. One of them gets a combo meal. I've never seen someone get a combo meal. It just doesn't make sense when there's a $1 menu. I got no money. Not a dollar, not a dime. So what am I doing? I order chicken nuggets. The guy says $3.12. And it starts to feel really hot in here. I should pretend I lost my wallet. Pretend I just forgot. Pretend I'm not hungry. So hungry. Pretend I'm not feeling this feeling I'm feeling. Pretend I'm some other person. Because I can't stand you knowing how much nothing I got. I should say I'm sorry. So sorry. But I don't say a thing. My cheeks get a fever, my hands got an itch. I'm not looking at anybody, but I know everybody's looking at me. The new kids know something's up, and the guy says again, $3.12, looking at me. Stop looking at me, please! So I run away. Turn around, I'm out the door. No, nobody can see what I'm feeling. But me.
The last illustrates the trauma of the witnessing or experiencing of community violence.
At night, I be having a lot of stuff on my mind. Can't hear my mama yelling at the news about cops and black boys and shame, shame, shame. I keep seeing pictures in my head. Handcuffs, red and blue lights, and deep black eyes that look like oceans. My friend Day-Day, he got eyes like that. Like they know a lot of stories if you ask him something. Except I don't know how to ask him nothing personal because my words get funny and my skin gets warm when I'm around him. I feel crazy. My older cousin, she say, I got a crush on him, but I say she need to mind her business. Sometimes at night, I hear police sirens. They don't make me feel warm and soft, more like chilly and prickly, like something bad could happen and I don't know what. I think about Day-Day, the way I hear the police talking to boys that look like him all the time. I get this feeling in my stomach, wondering if Day-Day's eyes are open and looking out in the world. If he ever feels chilly when he sees the police. If he ever feels warm
when he sees me. By understanding and responding to trauma, our care teachers help reduce its negative impact, support critical learning, and create a more positive school environment. Thank you.
That was Boccherini, played by Jemiah Dotson, an 8th grade student at ePrep and Rainey Institute. And I'm Lee Lazar, played by myself. Rainey Institute is a community art center for children in Cleveland. So we provide programs in music, dance, drama, visual arts to students between the ages of 3 and 18. Our mission is to keep kids in Cleveland involved in positive, enriching arts activities. We have served our community for a long time. We've been on East 55th Street since 1904. We currently serve more than 2,500 children per year, and we are always looking to expand our programs to serve even more kids. 7 years ago, we started a brand new program called El Sistema at Rainey with Isabel Troutwine, who's a violinist with the Cleveland Orchestra. Our program is based on a comprehensive orchestra music program that was created in Venezuela, under which children are taught to play instruments, primarily in the form of an orchestra. In terms of what skills Jemiah needed to use just to play the small piece that she played to start our presentation, Jemiah needed to listen to instructions and follow directions. She needed to use her hands, eyes, and ears independently. She needed to think about what she was doing and figure out ways to do it better. And at Rainey, in the context of an orchestra, she needed to work with other students and figure out how to cooperate with one another. Jemiah has learned much more than just playing a violin at Rainey. She's learned skills that she will be able to use for the rest of her life. I've had the incredible opportunity to watch Jemiah grow since she first came to Rainey Institute 8 years ago. And transform from a quiet kindergarten student into an accomplished, self-confident violinist who is comfortable performing in lots of different sites around Cleveland and speaking to lots of different groups of people. Jemiah, who has described herself as a complete introvert, actually has much to say.
El Sistema has given me better social skills. Music, to me, is a way to communicate, a hidden language. My violin talks to me. It says, yes, Jemiah, you can do it. You can be the best. In El Sistema, we have to learn not only to communicate verbally, but through body language and through instrumentals, which are skills that we have to use for the rest of our lives, whether we know it or not.
Jemiah's story of growth and accomplishment actually reflects lots of stories from children at Rainey Institute. Kids come through our front door and they try different art forms. They try music, they try dance, they try visual arts, they try drama. What we see is kids tend to connect primarily with one of those forms. They realize they're pretty good at it, they enjoy doing it. And with lots of performing that we have children do, we see children becoming much more self-confident, have a much higher self-image, and learn an important lesson, that if they work hard, they can do just about anything they want. It's been great watching Jemiah grow up at E-Prep and Village Prep and at Rainey and see the good grades that she has gotten throughout her primary years, her involvement in community orchestras, and we're very excited because Jemiah was just accepted to the Cleveland School of the Arts, so she will be continuing. She will be continuing her music education there.
One of my highlights I have experienced at Rainey was playing at Blossom Music Center, playing at 712, which is across the street, several times, and many other fun places. Also, one of my favorite highlights was when I got to play with a black duo of young men called Black Violin. I was the opening act and encore for them, and when we got finished playing the encore, the audience started clapping so loudly that they scared me, but I was happy that happened because them clapping that loudly told me that they actually enjoyed our playing and they would love to hear us again.
At Rainey, we celebrate our gifts, and those inspire us to work hard and empowers us to make a huge difference in our community.
When I grow up, I would like to be a professional violinist. I would even like to be in a professional orchestra, the Cleveland Orchestra.
More than just a dream for Jemiah. This is a plan as long as she follows her own advice.
Practice, keep practicing.
Thank you very much.
Wow, I just want to thank all the Jemiah, that was incredible. I really enjoyed your performance, and I know you'll reach your goal. I think everyone in this room believes in you. So thank you. And thank you to all of my peers on this panel. Once again, I'm truly inspired by the work that you're doing and the way you're making a difference in the lives of our young people every day. It's really beautiful. Now, let's have a little dialogue. I wanted to start by asking each of you if you could please share not only your personal mantra, but if you could please share your personal philosophy. How do you conceptualize and what drives you to conceptualize these innovative programs that you're introducing to transform the lives of young people in our communities? So I'm not sure who would like to start. Okay, thank you.
My philosophy has 3 simple parts. 1, music is important. 2, everyone is musical. And 3, there are many ways to be musical.
I'll share that I believe that learning happens in multiple ways. And it would be irresponsible of me to think that I am not being taught every day by the youth that I am teaching. So I think the core thing that drives me and also drives the work of Cleveland Public Theater is that we are committed to art changing lives and that there is a reciprocal feedback on that. And for us to create responsive programming with our community, we gotta be changed by our community. So we ask ourselves, how do we as an organization, how do our ethics, our modes evolve by what the youth teach us?
My personal mantra is that all children, one, they are resilient, that all children innately already have greatness in them. Our job is to help them, not tell them what to think, but help them discover the process of how to think, and then to raise a bar for them high enough for them to reach it. And once they reach that bar, raise it again and dare them to reach it again.
Some of our best new ideas and new programs actually don't come from us. They come from our students and our students' families. So a few years ago, some of the parents of our El Sistema students said that they would like to learn how to play a violin. So we started a class for families. It was a once-a-week class. We started with 9 parents and grandparents. 4 survived. And at the end of the semester, when we did one of our performances in our theater, we had 2 dads, 1 grandmother, and 1 mother playing violins next to their children. It was a beautiful moment. So some of our best ideas of how we engage kids and families come from the kids and families that we serve.
Program development, the most important driving factor for me is always research and assessment, and being open and willing to let that assessment change and influence how you move forward.
And I think what I would say is that at the Musical Theater Project, and if my colleague Jody Maley-Kirk, who's our Associate Director of Active Learning, were here, I think what we would both say is that story, and you saw this today, story is powerful. For us, song is powerful. That by exploring all of these feelings and thoughts for us in the context of musical theater, we can better understand and share our own journeys, define our journeys. I love, somebody's talked about learning to think about thinking. Who said that? Yeah, so that metacognitive aspect of beginning to understand how we help each other think about how we think is super important. And for us, ensuring that what we're doing is participant-centered. Our teaching artists are there certainly to lead and counsel and to help move things forward. But on our best days, our work is responding entirely to those individuals who are sharing their stories in the room.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have time for one additional question? I think there are a lot of us in the room who are educators or practitioners in some way, and I thought it'd be helpful to hear from each of you what has gotten in the way of your work, and perhaps we can start at the end with Lee. Lee, in the work that you're doing at the Rainey Institute, what has gotten in the way of your mission and your work?
There's a number of challenges that we face on an ongoing basis. Transportation of children to high-quality programs is a never-ending challenge. As a community, we need to figure out a better way to connect children with programs, and also to get more programs into schools in Cleveland and the surrounding communities. Resources, money is always a limitation, but in spite of those challenges, I think the organizations that are sitting at this panel today figure out innovative ways to overcome those challenges in order to serve kids.
It's such an interesting question because when you asked it, I thought there are a million things that were in the way, but my job is to be a creative problem solver and critical thinker to remove those barriers. So, yeah.
I mean, I think that I completely agree. Barriers simply need to be overcome. And it doesn't mean that it's easy. Our program, for example, we knew for 3 or 4 years that we not only wanted to create a program and adapt our Kids Love Musicals program for environments that serve students with intensive needs, but we knew we wanted to build a research project right in tandem with the development of that program. And until we could get the funding in place to do it, until we could partner with the Schubert Center and with Elena, again, I hope you guys get a chance to talk with her further about that research, which has its own challenges in terms of how we were able to do a human subject study out in the field. Those barriers are there. So yeah, it is an interesting question, but I think we leverage a lot and do as much as we possibly can with what we have. And I think that's one of the great strengths of the artistic process.
If I frame my mission as empowering families to make music a more meaningful part of their lives, their daily lives, then I think the barriers are primarily assumptions on the part of families or messages that they've heard that they're not musical or that their music is not important, that music is for experts, or that classical music is the only music that will matter for their children. So for me, getting the message out, and that can be through my teaching here of teachers at Case Western. I have a website that I maintain through my publications, through all of you, if you can spread the word that it doesn't have to be classical music to make a big difference in children's lives. Music is important to us as humans. So I think that's where I'm going with that.
This is how I'll answer that question. So it is vitally important that the artists that are nurturing, I believe, and Cleveland Public Theater believes, that the artists that are leading these projects and leading the collaboration with the Cleveland youth, that the youth can see themselves in those teaching artists. And so something that I'm always present to is creating teaching teams that represent someone who the youth can see themselves in. And also that we are providing a space where there can be elders in the room that also represent a diversity of perspectives, backgrounds, gender, orientation, age, and that they are excellent artists. And what is our responsibility? To nurture more artists of color in the community leading these projects.
My answer, I'm sure, is going to sound convoluted, but it is the answer that I absolutely mean. I really, just like I teach the young people, I really only have one barrier, one possible barrier, and that could only be me. Because if I took a look at the finances, we don't have a budget because we're not a non-funded program. I could call that a barrier. We don't have a bus, so I can say transportation is a barrier. The same unfunded group, we're in Paris, we're in Senegal, we're in Ghana. So I don't see barriers. There's bureaucracy. There's people who don't understand youth culture, people who don't care about youth culture, people who don't understand the arts. I don't see barriers. Everything is just, okay, keep running, hurdle, keep running, hurdle, keep running, hurdle. Same thing I teach the young people. IEP, just a hurdle. You're still going to graduate. Oh, OST, just a hurdle. So I'm conditioned against a barrier. My mind only sees through it. Like in track and field, there's an opening right there. So it's not a brick wall. It's just something I have to jump over, and I know another one's coming. So I just have to keep running, and my mindset is to jump over whatever's waiting on me.
Thank you to all of you for your answers. I'm sorry, of course, Jemiah.
From a child's perspective, I would have to say something that's very difficult for us would be keeping interest in something, because for children, I can personally say this for myself, that most of us have short attention spans, and sometimes if we don't really get into something, at one point we just end up quitting it altogether. And then another reason we quit is because there aren't enough challenges to keep us interested. One thing that children like to do is to keep us on our feet is like to just give us more challenges, throw it at us left and right. Like you make us think we overcame something and we get a break, but then that's when you catch us off our feet. That's what makes us feel like, oh, like they think they can like get me off my feet. They think they can beat me, but no, let me show them I'm better. I can do this and I can do that. I can overcome whatever they throw at me. That's what keeps me interested in the violin, because I always know there's going to be someone better at me at anything I do. And me personally, sometimes I just don't like that idea. So then I always push myself to do better, to practice more, to be the best I can be, and even be the best at it completely.
Yes. I think that was my favorite answer. There's a lot of wisdom that you just shared with us. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, there's always going to be someone better, but how do you go surpass that? How do you keep moving and building? And thank you for that reminder. I'd like to open up the floor to questions. If anyone has a question, we have someone in the back of the room with a microphone. You're welcome to ask a question to any of our panelists or myself. Right up here.
Hi, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that from your observations and your sharing of information and the visuals, we all know how the arts can change lives. And I want to say to the young folks here, Jemiah and the young man here from the poet spoken word, that thank you so much. We can see how the arts have transformed both of your lives here, and especially exuding confidence. So thank you so much for being here, because you're why we're here today as well. So thank you so much for what you're doing and for sharing with us as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I have a question. So I have a young lady I deal with, ninth grader, and over the last 4 or 5, 6 weeks, I kind of pull up her report card and see how she's doing. This young lady has 5 Fs and 1 A in choir. How can I get her to transition what's happening in choir to I don't know, some of her other classes to kind of get her on a track that might be a little bit more productive?
That some of my friends also suffer from things like that. So in certain subjects they like that, and other classes that they don't. So they feel like, oh, I don't like this class, so I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to end up failing it. So one thing that I always think of is just like change the subject up. Do something different from the normal agenda to get them more interested in it, like captivate their attention, and maybe play like a few games, because I know in math class, a lot of us don't really like it, but personally, it's my favorite. But in math class, our teacher knows that we don't like math class, so she like gets us real hyped up by giving us a lot of energy, letting us play math-related games, and even like sometimes taking free days off from like parts that we do real well and we don't really need help on. We take breaks off and like watch math-related things to like help us get our energy back up and to help us focus more. So I would just say change the agenda up from normal, and also throw a few games in there, because kids like to play games.
And I think
I would also add that it's, in that particular case, there's engagement going on in that class. And one of the things that for, every art form is different. For us, what we know about musical theater is that it offers so many points of engagement because of the different qualities that musical theater provides, whether it be music, whether it be acting, whether it be movement, that changing things up in that way, providing multiple opportunities to learn things differently is tremendously important. And earlier today in the education forum, one of the panelists said we've got to give more autonomy to teachers. That is an essential piece of this, in my opinion, because if we are going to ask our teachers to learn more, to teach differently, to meet students where they are, they have to have the support and the autonomy to be able to do so as they are as individuals as well, because we all have our own strengths and way that we creatively express too.
Oh, thank you very much for that. We have a question in the front.
Hi, thank you all for your comments. My question is, I work with parents doing parent engagement. And the reality is with a lot of the parents that I work with is they don't have the access and opportunity to get their children involved in the arts. And unfortunately, it's not in schools as, to the level that we would like it to be. So my question is, how as a parent would you suggest that they can go about introducing their child to the arts and making sure that they have a child that really values the arts?
Mine first is to encourage the parents to talk with their children about what they personally like to do in the arts. So what kind of music they listen to, or model for their children. Oh, you know what? I'm feeling so sad today, and this song helps express what I'm feeling. Or I'm feeling sad, and I'm going to take this song to help lift me out of that sadness. And so when their children see their parents using music in their lives, then they'll have that model. And I think the model can be what's important, the most important, and it's what is there. It's free. It's who they are. So honoring who they are and letting them show that to their children. And then encouraging them, I'm thinking of the local libraries have so many resources. They've got drop-in programs. The Music Settlement, Karen Heitlinger is here. The Music Settlement is doing more and more outreach through local libraries where we have music and movement teachers going and doing parent-child classes free in the local libraries. So we'll try to keep amping that up as well. And maybe we can connect afterwards as well. Other thoughts on that?
Did I see a hand in the back of the room? Yes. A microphone is on its way to you.
Okay. Hi, I was going to say to that parent, I had a question, but I was going to say to that parent up there, you have resources like the Rainey Institute that works on a sliding scale, and also the Music Settlement. That's when my daughter takes piano. She's taken piano there for several years, and you're able to pay on a sliding scale. I was going to ask the panel to maybe talk about, if you're in schools, when you go to schools, maybe some of the challenges you face about tying some of your artistic work into standards, which I know a lot of people in schools may ask you to do, or tying your work into standards, or just challenges that you may face from traditional educators who may not totally buy into what it is that you're serving.
This is an area where we took great pains when we created our program to lay a foundation, to connect our musicals, which are all literature-based musicals, to English language arts standards. We know that they support all sorts of arts standards. There's a new national core arts standards that everybody here should look up. It's a great website provided by the Kennedy Center, but it's English language arts that's tested. So we started there. But just last year, we actually took efforts with a music educator to not only reinforce that and demonstrate the ways, all of the benchmarks that we meet from K through 5th grade for our 2-day, and then we go K through 12 extended for our special education residencies, but also to create things like I can statements, because I don't know if you guys know this, but teachers have to write on the board what the student learning objectives are for the day. I think that anything that we can do as arts educators in that way to make things easier for teachers to make those connections is really important. And so in that way, it shouldn't be something that we have to do separate from. It should just be part of the development of our arts programming, because that's what ensures that the meaning and the importance is there.
So Cleveland Playhouse has 10 full-time teaching artists in 8 different CMSD schools. And I think when we see resistance, it's because that particular teacher or principal or staff member didn't necessarily have access to the arts in his, her, or they's, childhood education or adult education. But once they see the power and the change that arts can make in their students' daily lives, in their students' classrooms and their behavior and so forth, they go from what one principal once described as voluntold to volunsold.
We are taking more of our programs into community schools. So for our El Sistema program, we started a new site this past September at the Westside Village Prep Willard campus. So it's an after-school program in the school. This coming September, we're going to start a new program in one of the East Cleveland schools. We've started providing arts programs for children in a homeless shelter. We've also been doing programs in Cleveland libraries. So we're taking more of our programs that have traditionally taken place on East 55th Street out into the communities where kids are.
With Cleveland Public Theater, the core education programs, Whitehaven, STEP, and Brick City, none of those programs are happening in schools. So Sean, you might be like, why is she talking right now? But I can speak to this idea of resistance. And when, either if you're going into a school or maybe a library, or for me, collaborating with CMHA, and all of our Brick City Theater programming is happening on site in the estates where the youth live. So they're literally going to their backyard, to the community center, and creating work there. Whenever I have experienced resistance, and this relates back to the spiral, I think, it's because I usually need to stop and listen to my collaborators. And take a pause and say, oh, okay, we're in partnership here. And there's something that with your resistance, you're trying to teach me about what is happening in this space.
We're not school-based, but I think there's great value in matching an arts program to the core standards. I'm taking the most of the summer off to finish our curriculum for that very reason, to make sure that it aligns, because I think the conversation of either or, I could understand a teacher's frustration when that very public report card comes out and your school is an academic failure, academic emergency, you're at a grade F, and Ms. Honey wants to come in and do poetry. I don't need you doing poetry in my class. We are failing horribly. But if you had the curriculum and it absolutely matched up, I think it would be a better sell for them to understand the value in it.
Thank you, everyone. We have a question up front.
It's not really a question. I wonder if there's a change happening. My son's going to school to be a teacher, first to 8. And he's taking a class this semester on integrating the arts into his curriculum planning, which was really exciting.
Hello. I just wanted to say that things I think are changing. My son is going to school to be a teacher, and he's wanting to teach birth to 8. And this semester he's taking a class specifically on integrating the arts into his curriculum planning, into the standards. And so he was like, Mom, what do I do? Because he's very, organized and whatnot, but he's a very creative, artistic young man. I said, let's brainstorm this. And we did. We took a book and we integrated all the different arts, music and movement, the theater, drama. We integrated visual arts, even like more tactile arts and things like that. And by the end, he was more excited about this one class that he's taken than he has any of the others. And I said, that's what's going to
That's going to be what sells you to your kids, because they need the arts to get their juices flowing. They really do. So I'm thinking there's a change afoot. So.
Say to you that I wish I could say that I am confident that the next generation, that the emerging and the next generation of teachers will be looking for this, and I am hopeful that policy can continue to be changed regarding testing. Because I don't know if you guys experience the same thing, but I can tell you that this month, April, which is the big testing window for Ohio, our residency numbers go whoo. And our teaching artists don't have a whole lot of work this month. And when we talk about resistance, it's not, you know, I think that teachers know that this works, but I think that teachers are limited by what they can do because of these testing windows, and it affects what all of us up here are able to do as well.
Thank you for that comment. Did we have one more question? One in the back, thank you. And this will be our last question, I'm sorry, afraid.
Mine is related to those last few and reinforcing the message. And I guess it's a request from all of us to talk up the importance of this kind of learning. I'm a former kindergarten and Head Start teacher in classrooms that were very child-centered, play-based, but very academic. And we sang, we danced, we acted out. We know that in brain development, we want, in order to build learning and the brains, we need children engaged in activities that stimulate multiple parts of the brain simultaneously. So what you are doing with children, I commend you. I think it's fantastic, but it should be happening every day in classrooms. Howard Gardner, his theory of multiple intelligences, we need to spread the word about it. It's so important. Also, when children participate in these sorts of activities, it's a way of teaching someone else, right? If they're expressing what they've learned by various artistic means, they're teaching it to someone else. Well, we know the best way to learn something is to teach it to someone else. So it's through the arts that you can do that. That's an important means. And any teacher can understand that, and it can actually maybe help their children do better on those hated tests.
Excellent, thank you. And with that, I think several of the panelists can attest to the comment that was just made in terms of young people teaching us and us learning from them as well. So that's a really powerful takeaway, and it's one of the things that I admire about each of your programs as I continue to think about my work at the museum. I'm definitely very inspired by the work that you're doing. We are just about running out of time, but before we end the panel, I wanted to ask one parting question. If you were to tweet one final takeaway that you would like for all of us to leave with, inspiring words, if you could please share those with us. We'll start with you, honey.
I've never tweeted in my life. So that would be a first. Kind of like Facebook, right?
It's kind of like Facebook. Okay. It is. It's kind of, but shorter. You only have a few characters.
Art changes and saves lives.
All right.
Learning happens in all directions.
So my tweet is probably directed to the people in the other room and not the people in the arts room. But let's add the arts and music to all of these advocacy programs, to the pediatricians reading to the children, to the food bank, everywhere. Let's add the arts, let's add music.
I think that every student, regardless of circumstances, regardless of abilities, regardless of any circumstance, needs opportunity for creative expression. We all have to make that a priority in practice and in policy.
Keep listening to the children and let what you learn from them influence what you give back.
Ditto to everything that was said, and thanks to the Schubert Center for today's program.
I would have to say, keep going, keep pushing, and keep conquering.
Thank you, everyone, so much. Before we part, I just wanted to encourage you to stick around and connect with everyone in the room, connect with our panelists, but also stick around because in about a half hour, there will be an amazing intergenerational drum performance coming to close the day out just before the networking hour. So hang on, and thank you all so much for being here.